What's going on, guys? It's VenomousFatman again. I'm sitting here on the bit with DSP, DarksydePhil, the King of Hate, and we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff over the course of the interview, but we're getting into our final part. So we're going to talk about now, besides talking about online play, Street Fighter, competitive gaming and all that stuff, we're going to talk about more as what we all love best, the games, the video game industry. So to start off, Phil, I should have asked this a little bit earlier, but kind of, pertaining to all this stuff, when you go to choose a game for your playthroughs, when you do your whole DSP's, schedule and stuff, what is it that you really look for besides popularity, for the most part, of a game, what you're going to play, and if you're going to, put it at a certain date when you're going to play it, you go through your whole playthrough and stuff, or fan appreciation, what's the process that you usually go through when you're actually deciding what game to play?
Well, that's a good question. There's a lot of different factors I look at. First of all, if I even like the genre of game that's coming out. A lot of people have asked me the question, gee, Phil, why are you playing this game? Why didn't you play this particular game? One of the games that I got the biggest question about was Gran Turismo 5. Why didn't I try that? Well, the bottom line is I'm just not really a fan of racing sim games. I do like some racing games, the ones that are more arcade style, I guess I would say. But I'm just not a fan of these racing simulations. I never have been. I'm not a car guy. I'm not into cars. I don't collect cars or worry about modifying my car. So it's not something I'm interested in. After considering that, then I would probably look at something like, gee, is it going to be a popular game, or is it a game or that's similar to another game I've played, or a sequel to a game that I've played that maybe I've liked already. Also, sometimes it's just dumb timing. I mean, some of these games, they plan their releases for really silly times of the year. Like, if you remember, back in November, you had Fallout New Vegas came out, and the same day, Vanquish was released. What the hell they were thinking doing that, I have absolutely no clue. But luckily, I did finish Fallout New Vegas in a quick enough time period that I could try out Vanquish, which actually ended up being one of the best games of the year and one of my top 20 picks. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. Another factor would be cost. Obviously, if there's 100 games coming out in 1 month, I have to pick and choose which ones out of those that I want to play. I can't play every single game, especially if every game is a $60 release. I kind of have to be a little bit on the cautious side. So there are a lot of factors that go into it. Another thing that I would say is the time that it's going to take to play the game, and if the investment of time that's needed to complete the game is going to be worth it. So, for example, a lot of people have asked me, why didn't I play DC Universe Online that was just released? Well, the answer is because it's an MMO, and an MMO takes a significant amount of time and investment in order to get to the end game, which is pretty much when you're considered you've beaten the game. I just don't have that kind of time. I don't think anyone's going to want to watch me sit here and grind for 80 hours to get a level 40 character in an MMO when I could have played 3 other games that might be great during that time frame. So there's really a lot of different factors that need to be considered. I would probably say a lot of people ask me, in a game like Dragon Age Origins, why didn't I play that game? Well, it was a simple answer. It didn't seem to me like it was going to be a major detriment if I didn't play it, and I knew that it was one of the longest games of the year, and I had other stuff that I wanted to play. So it's really a factor, a combination of a couple of different factors. Do I like the game, or the genre of game, the length of time it's going to take to beat the game, the actual timing of the release of the game, and probably also the cost factor as well.
Now, with that all being said, you've pretty much, if anybody just looks at your channel, you've played just about everything. At least from what I could gain, except savor a couple here and there, like what you said with Gran Turismo 5. I remember you never did Mafia 2. I remember when that came out, a lot of people kind of got a little annoyed about that, but, it wasn't such a huge deal. But for the most part, you play everything. You pretty much all the big releases, or a lot of the big releases and stuff, you do full playthroughs of them, even going back in some cases, checking out all the stuff. Now, with that being said, what is it about gaming so far within the industry that you're really excited about, or that you're really happy about, and are really pleased to see within like the time that you've been on YouTube doing all these playthroughs with different video games?
I have to say probably the thing that I'm very pleased with is games are now becoming to the point where they're being taken seriously as a form of entertainment and a form of art. And the game really that springs to mind at the forefront of that is Heavy Rain from 2010. I mean, playing that game, I felt like I was watching an 8 to 10 hour long interactive drama movie or reading a really great murder mystery novel. the voice acting, even though it was kind of funny because they were mispronouncing words because it was developed by, a European studio, voice acting was great. The graphics were amazing. The game was so stylized and so hyper-realistic. The music, the score, everything in that game just came together to make it probably one of my favorite games of all time. And I would love to see more games like that where you can sit down and you feel like you experienced the story from start to finish. A lot of this stuff, a lot of people still say, oh, video games are just for kids. And most of the people that say that are the people that only own a Nintendo Wii and don't play more than, an hour a day because they're just flailing around with their Wiimotes and they don't understand that games are actually changing. They're becoming an art form. They're becoming a form of entertainment medium that's different than anything else because they're actually interactive. And I really like where we're going with these more seriously themed games. I mean, Mass Effect 1 and 2, such amazing character development to the point where most of Mass Effect 2 ended up actually being side missions to recruit more characters rather than even caring about the main storyline. So, yeah, that's really the angle that I'm liking with games, that they're becoming more of an emotional investment, stories that are so gripping and so realistic that you actually care about the characters in the story rather than just, I'm going to sit down and blow up aliens for an hour today and then I'm going to walk away. That's really where I think the medium's going, where it's going to excel, and I'm really pleased about it.
So with that being said, looking on the flip side of the coin, what were some games or some things about the video game industry that really disappointed you, really got you angry? I know I've seen a couple videos of yours where you were pretty much ready to throw the controller at the screen for just having to sit there and play that game, or you pretty much, put someone on blast or some game studio on blast for a particular game that was made or wasn't made right. So in your opinion, which one was the worst that you have ever come into contact with?
Some alarming trends that I've definitely seen in 2010. I would say number one would be games that are released and they're just not complete. And the game that comes to mind right at the forefront to me was Star Wars Force Unleashed 2. I mean, that game had a 5-hour campaign, no multiplayer, and it's actually come to light. I don't know if anyone's really caught wind of this yet, but it's come to light that looking at internal memos from this gaming studio that developed that game, that they actually did ship an incomplete game. They purposely took levels out of the game so that they could later sell them as DLC. And that is ridiculous. That is called scamming your customer, making them think that they're buying a complete package for $60 just so you can try to get more money down the road. I mean, that's an alarming trend. I really hope that it stops because DLC just for the sake of making a buck as opposed to actually adding value for your customer is not benefiting anyone. I'd say another alarming trend that I'm seeing are games being shipped with so many freaking bugs to the point that the game is just an annoyance. And the game that comes to mind is Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas, in my completely honest opinion, might have been my game of the year for 2010 if it shipped without the bugs it had. Because that game has over 40 hours of gameplay out of the box, amazing voice acting, the graphics still stand up, they improved upon so many things from Fallout 3, but the game was buggy as hell. The game, it would lock up, it would take 5 to 10 minutes to load certain areas, which is absolutely unacceptable in 2010. The items would just stop working, people would get stuck in walls. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I understand with the breadth and the size of that project that maybe it's impossible to catch everything, but how is it that so many people experienced the same exact bugs once that game was shipped to retail? That just means they didn't want to take the time to fix the problems. And that's another trend that I really don't want to see. If I'm paying $60 and I'm giving you my hard-earned money for a game, that damn well better be a complete game, and that game better, at least for the most part, be bug-free. I understand you can have a bug here or there that maybe you didn't catch, some crazy wild thing. I played some games where I randomly fell through the floor, but then it never happened again. Okay, that's acceptable. But not a game like New Vegas that's, a Game of the Year candidate being shipping with dozens and dozens of game bugs. That's just not acceptable.
All right, so real quickly before we kind of, end this interview off, say 3 things that come to your mind or talk about them a little bit. Was your best playthrough in your opinion, because we all know pretty much what your fans' opinions are, and I think you may have lightly touched upon what was your favorites within your Game of the Year videos, but of all time, your favorite playthrough, your worst playthrough, and your underdog.
My favorite playthrough, and I think this is pretty much, I do agree with the opinions of the fans, is probably Heavy Rain. Again, because it was probably one of my favorite games of all time. Loved every minute I was playing that game. Always wondering what's going on, who's the killer. Just the fact that you could kind of ride with the game because it wasn't so control intense. It wasn't like you had to be shooting people and dodging every 2 seconds. It was more just being immersed in the story, and then every once in a while worrying about a quick time event. And, I tried to be as funny as I could during it as well. So I think that was probably my favorite. My least favorite, I would have to say, would probably be something like, it would be a tie between maybe Skate 2 and maybe something like Kane and Lynch 2. And here's why.
I thought it was Epic Mickey, honestly.
Well, Skate 2 is not a bad game. Skate 2 is actually a really good game. But the problem is Skate 2 is the kind of game that they want you to invest a significant amount of time into the game to learn all these advanced controls. And it's actually not possible to beat the campaign of Skate 2 until you master these really complex controls. Me as a casual person just walking into that kind of genre, because I'd never been playing skate games before. I'd actually never played Tony Hawk or any of that stuff. I was really disappointed because the game looks like a lot of fun, and from people who I've talked to, they say, yeah, the game is really great once you get into it and you learn everything about it. Then it's an outstanding game. But for me, trying to do a playthrough of it, I didn't have the time to just sit there and practice hours on end to get the controls down. That kind of disappointed me. But I'd say recently, Kane and Lynch 2 is a soggy piece of dog shit. That game is so short. The graphic style was awful. The gameplay was so repetitive and boring. The story sucked. The online play sucked. It was a complete waste of time. How often can you say that the first installment of a series was bad, and then when they went to make the sequel to improve it, it actually got worse? I can't even think of many games where I can say that. Kane and Lynch 2 is one of them. That game really, really sucked. Underdog playthrough. There's a couple games that I played last year that I think a lot of people didn't really like, per se, like maybe Bayonetta, maybe Transformers War for Cybertron, or maybe even Singularity. These were games that, when they were released, they were really solid releases, but they weren't really pushed that much by the gaming media. And so a lot of people kind of passed over them, especially Bayonetta. A lot of people told me, I watched your first video and it was so heavy into, Japanese culture and that kind of stuff, I couldn't take it, and I didn't watch the rest of the playthrough. But that doesn't mean that these aren't good games. These games were kind of like sleeper hits. Singularity taking a lot of the best things out of recent FPS games and combining them. I thought that was an outstanding idea. Plus, the plot was really good, having multiple endings. Transformers War for Cybertron, the first Transformers game ever, that really was worth playing, and that's worth saying something, especially with all the crappy Michael Bay movie tie-ins that have been coming out. And I really like where that series is going. So, there are a lot of games that I play, and I think that maybe my playthroughs turn people on to them because, maybe they didn't have the money to buy the game at the time, or maybe the gaming media wasn't really picking up on those games at the time. And you know what? If someone watches a playthrough of mine or a video of mine and they say, wow, that game looks really good, and then they go out and they buy it and they enjoy it, then I think that I've done my job.
There you go. Go and have it, guys. So anyway, before we close this off, anybody that you want to give a shout out to or a rant out to before we close it?
Well, two quick things. First of all, I definitely want to plug Don'tBlowThis.com, the Super Turbo Revolution, a group of Super Turbo players who basically have gotten together and said, listen, we refuse to play these shitty console versions of the game. And we got our heads together and basically hooked up 2 Super Turbo cabinets head-to-head. And every couple of weeks we do a live stream. We've got some of the best players on the East Coast to come to Connecticut here and play with us. There's going to be a live stream this Sunday, January 23rd at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we at least try to do it once a month. We're going to try to do it every other week as long as we can, but obviously things might change. If we do, we'll let everyone know. So be sure to check that out. There's going to be a lot more information coming up about that this year, especially the fact that we're trying to revive Arcade Super Turbo, and we're trying to get it at Evolution. But we'll talk more about that as it comes.
Yeah, we're running low on time now. We got like 30 seconds.
Oh, crap. All right, the other thing I want to say real quick, some stuff coming up with my channels, DSP Gaming and DSP Street Fighter. I'm working with a third-party company, and good things are coming, but more about that as it happens.
All right, so there you guys have it. So this has been The BITT, the boys in the tube. Thanks, DSP, for coming on here. Real thanks to the fans for being supportive, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Take it easy, everybody.
All right, great.